At the office gala she said, "I'm with the best man here," and she wasn't talking about me. You ever have one of those moments where your entire chest tightens, and you can't tell if it's anger, heartbreak, or just your body trying not to collapse in front of everyone? That was me, standing there with a half-empty glass of champagne, watching my wife smile at another man like she'd rehearsed that line for weeks. And the room didn't even notice. The music kept playing, people kept laughing, the lights kept dancing on the ceiling. But for me, time stopped. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always come crashing through the door. Sometimes it tiptoes into a crowded room, dresses itself up in charm, and speaks in a voice that everyone else thinks is innocent, until you realize it's a knife pressed between your ribs. I stood there frozen, running through every possible explanation in my head. Maybe she meant it as a joke. Maybe she was trying to flatter her boss, or smooth over some awkward conversation. But then I caught the way she leaned closer, the way her hand brushed his sleeve, and I knew this wasn't innocent. This was personal. I didn't cause a scene. God knows I wanted to. I wanted to march across the room, grab her by the hand, and remind her who she came with. But something in me told me to wait. To what? Because sometimes silence is louder than any outburst, and I wanted her to reveal herself, without me giving her the excuse of saying I overreacted. So I stayed back, sipped the champagne that suddenly tasted like vinegar, and memorized every detail of what I saw. That night, he wasn't just some stranger, he was someone I recognized. Marcus, senior partner at her firm, the guy she always said was just a mentor, the guy she said reminded her of her father. Funny how they always use that line. I'd shaken his hand once at a holiday party, and he'd looked me in the eye with that perfect politician's smile that hides more than it reveals. And now here he was, standing too close, laughing too easily, while my wife's eyes glowed like she was 17 again. You want to know the worst part? Nobody else noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. To them it was just another moment in a room full of networking, schmoozing, meaningless office small talk. But to me, it was a window into a truth I'd been too blind, or maybe too trusting to see. The rest of that night I played my part. I smiled when I had to, nodded at conversations I didn't hear, pretended like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was burning. And when we got home, I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. I needed more than just that moment, more than just a line she could brush off as a joke. I needed proof. I needed the kind of truth that couldn't be laughed away with a glass of wine and a clever excuse. So I started watching, not in the creepy stalking way, just noticing things I'd ignored before. The way her phone was always face down on the table now, the late nights that stretched later and later, the traffic that somehow lasted 2 extra hours, the sudden interest in new perfume, new dresses, lingerie I hadn't seen before. You start adding these little things up, and it's like building a puzzle you wish you didn't know the picture. One night she came home with a story about drinks after work. She smelled like whiskey, and something else, something expensive, masculine, cologne, that wasn't mine. I asked casually, "Who'd you go out with?" And she listed off a few names, her tone just a little too rehearsed, like she'd practiced the list in the car ride home. And that's when I knew I wasn't imagining things. I could have exploded then, could have called her out, thrown accusations like daggers, demanded answers. But here's the thing, when someone betrays you, sometimes the worst thing you can do to them isn't to rage. It's to stay calm. It's to let them think you're still in the dark while you collect every piece of the puzzle. Because when the truth finally lands on the table, you want it to be undeniable. So I played along. I asked how Marcus was doing, pretended to be interested in her stories about work, even suggested we invite him and his wife to dinner sometime. She smiled nervously at that, said he was too busy, changed the subject, and I stored that reaction away like another piece of evidence. Meanwhile, I started digging. I checked our joint account, like I'd done once before for something else, and sure enough there were dinners that didn't line up with the night she claimed she was stuck at the office. I found rideshare receipts that ended near his apartment building, though she swore she was at a client's, and then one night, by accident, or maybe fate, I found the message. She left her laptop open on the counter. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was grabbing a glass of water, walking past when the screen lit up with a notification. Just one line of text. "Last night was amazing. Same place next week." And it wasn't signed with a name, but I didn't need one. I didn't touch the laptop, didn't screenshot it, didn't forward it to myself. I just stood there staring at those words like they were carved into my skin. Because sometimes you don't need 100 receipts, 100 excuses. Sometimes one line is enough. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe, like nothing was wrong, and I realized something. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about choice. She had chosen him, chosen to let me believe I was still her partner, while giving the best of herself to someone else. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to be the fool who kept pretending. But here's the twist. I didn't confront her the next morning. I didn't pack my bags. I didn't scream or slam doors. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's patient. It's precise. It's letting someone build their tower of lies so high that when you finally pull the bottom brick, the whole thing comes crashing down on their head. So I started planning. Quietly, carefully. I documented what I could. I talked to a lawyer. Just to ask questions, I said. I learned about finances, assets, custody laws. Even though we didn't have kids, I made copies of everything. And all the while she thought I was the same clueless husband too wrapped up in my own world to notice. The next gala was coming up. Another office event. Another night where the wine would flow and secrets would spill under chandeliers. And I decided that would be my stage. Not to humiliate her. Not to scream in front of everyone. But to show her calmly that I wasn't the man she thought she could outsmart. That night arrived faster than I expected. I watched her get ready, slipping into a dress I'd never seen before, smiling at her reflection like she was headed into a movie scene. She asked me if the tie I chose matched, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and for a moment I almost forgot. Almost. But then I remembered the message, the receipts, the hand on Marcus's arm, and I steeled myself. When we got to the gala, I didn't stick by her side like I usually did. I let her wander, let her find her way to him, and sure enough, within an hour, there they were again. Too close, too comfortable, too familiar. But this time, I didn't just watch. I acted. The thing about planning isn't just about timing. It's about patience. I'd spent weeks holding my tongue, storing evidence, building up this quiet storm inside me. So when that moment came at the gala, when I saw her standing there with Marcus, hand lightly resting on his chest as she laughed at something I knew wasn't funny, I didn't charge in like some jealous fool. No, I waited until the room gave me the perfect stage. It was toward the middle of the night when the speeches began. A hush fell over the crowd, glasses clinked, and the senior partners gave their predictable pep talks about growth, vision, teamwork, the same lines they'd recycled every year. I stood near the back, watching her, the way her eyes lit up at every word Marcus said, like he wasn't just her boss but her leading man. And that's when the thought hit me. She had no idea how much I knew. That ignorance was my advantage. When the speeches ended and the mingling picked up again, I walked over, calm, collected. My heart was pounding, but my face wore the same polite smile I'd perfected over years of social functions. She looked up as I approached, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, like she wasn't sure whether I'd come to join or to disrupt. "Mind if I steal my wife for a moment?" I said, looking at Marcus first, not her. He gave me that same politician smile, all teeth, no sincerity. "Of course," he said smoothly, stepping back. She looked almost disappointed, like I'd ruined the game she was playing. I didn't take her far, just to a quieter corner, still visible to the crowd. I wanted eyes on us without ears. She set her glass down and gave me a look, half annoyance, half curiosity. "What's this about?" I leaned in, lowered my voice but kept my eyes locked on hers. "I know." Her face didn't break right away. She was good. I'll give her that. She tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, played innocent. "Know what? The hotel, the dinners, the messages, him." I nodded subtly toward Marcus. "I know everything." For a second the mask slipped, her lips parted, her breath hitched, and her hand twitched like she wanted to grab the glass again, but couldn't trust herself to hold it steady. Then, like the actress she'd become, she laughed softly. "You're imagining things." But she knew I wasn't, and I wanted her to feel that. "You think I'd come to you with nothing?" I said quietly. "You think I'd confront you here of all places if I didn't have every piece lined up? The bank statements, the receipts, the texts you forgot to delete. I didn't imagine a damn thing. And when this is over, Neither will you. Her eyes darted around the room, checking to see if anyone was watching. Nobody was. Not yet. But she knew how quickly whispers could spread in a place like this. Not here, she hissed. But I smiled. A calm, steady smile. Exactly, because this wasn't about a screaming match behind closed doors. This wasn't about giving her the chance to spin the story, to make me out to be paranoid or controlling. This was about pulling the curtain back in the very room she'd flaunted him in. I stepped back, gave her space, let her stew in the silence. And then I did something she didn't expect. I walked back to Marcus. "Marcus," I said, extending a hand. He looked a little confused but shook it anyway. "I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" he asked, his voice carrying just enough to catch the attention of a few people nearby. "For keeping my wife so entertained while I've been busy. Really generous of you." The smile on his face faltered. Just slight. She froze where she stood, eyes wide, lips parted, but no words coming out. A couple of heads turned. That was enough. The ripple had started. He tried to recover. "I think you've got the wrong idea." "Oh, I don't," I said, still smiling. "But I'll let you two figure out how to spin it for everyone else." And then I walked away, just like that, left them standing there, caught between denial and panic, while whispers began to buzz like bees in the room. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to expose screenshots, or wave papers in the air. I'd planted the seed, and the room would water it for me. The ride home was silent. She didn't reach for my hand, didn't try to explain, and when we stepped inside, she finally cracked. "What the hell was that?" she snapped, slamming her purse down. "That," I said, "was me handling the truth you thought I couldn't." She paced, hands in her hair. "You embarrassed me. You made us both look—" "No," I cut her off. "You did that when you chose him. I just stopped covering for you." And in that moment, something in her face shifted. The arrogance drained. The smirk I'd seen so many times evaporated. She looked smaller, cornered, maybe even scared, because she realized I wasn't the same man who ignored the late nights and brushed off the excuses. I wasn't going to be her safety net anymore. The weeks that followed were chaos. She tried to spin the story, said I was paranoid, said Marcus was just a friend, said the texts were out of context. But she underestimated two things: the evidence I'd quietly collected, and the fact that once a rumor takes root in a workplace, it spreads faster than wildfire. Within a month, Marcus had stepped down from a major account. Whispers of inappropriate conduct floated through the halls. She wasn't fired, but her reputation tarnished. As for us, papers were filed, of course, but this time, I wasn't caught off guard. I wasn't staring at a pen that betrayed me. I was the one pushing the documents forward, the one making sure the truth was written in black and white. And when she tried to play hardball, demanding the house, the savings, the same script as before, I slid copies of her financial transfers across the table, money she thought I wouldn't notice missing, tucked away in accounts she thought were invisible. Her lawyer's face paled. Hers went red. "Settle," my lawyer said calmly. And she did. It wasn't about revenge, though it felt like it. It wasn't about destroying her, though part of me knew she'd destroyed herself. It was about reclaiming what she thought she'd stripped from me. My dignity, my clarity, my ability to stand tall and say I know my worth. Months later, I ran into someone from her firm at a coffee shop. They asked how I was doing, lowered their voice, and whispered. We all knew something was going on. You handled it better than anyone could have. And that was when I realized I hadn't just survived it, I'd owned it. Do I still feel the sting sometimes? Yeah. Do I still lie awake some nights, wondering what I missed, when the switch flipped from love to betrayal? Absolutely. But I don't let it define me anymore. She made her choice, and I made mine. So when people ask about that gala, about the night my wife stood in front of everyone and declared she was with the best man, I just smile, because she was right. She was with the best man there. She just didn't realize it was me, not Marcus. The man who saw the truth, stood his ground and walked away with his head held high. And that, I think, is the real victory.